Well, hello everyone, and welcome to Mental Junk Food, and this is the place where we talk about all things comics, sci-fi, horror, fantasy, pop culture, and everything in between, and anything else that may tickle your fancy for that matter, if it gets me likes and subscribes. So please remember to do that to be kept up to all my latest shenanigans. Now, shameless plug-in out of the way, I am, of course, your host, CB Smallwood, if I haven't mentioned that already, and today's topic is no one can stop EVS. Or no. You can't read it that way. We got to read it the right way, you know, because it has a question mark on the end. It is, no one can stop EVS. Now, for those that don't know, EVS is short for Ethan Van Sciver, or as I like to say it, Ethan Van Sciver. Sciver. I like to attach a little bit of infamy to it. I think it gives it a nice ring. That is kind of a, you have to admit, that's a bit of a badass last name, Van Sciver. And that's the way it should be read. regardless of what you think of EVS, that probably should be the way his last name should be pronounced. Now, having said that, it's a pretty bold topic to say, and I will give I'll give a spoiler alert up front. Person believe that no, the answer is probably no. Don't hate on me for saying that. I'll for anyone that is anti-Comicsgate or hates Ethan Van Sciver, I will tell you how you can beat this man. I will give you the keys to the kingdom. And if you are Comicsgate, don't hate on me either. Enough with the hate, please. Now let's segue over to EVS's Cyberfrog Indiegogo campaign. And I'm going to give a brief history for those who are not familiar with the man, if you've been living on the rock. And I'm sorry, Patrick, not trying to single you out. But Ethan Van Sciver, started out, put myself on the spot here. I need to try to remember correctly. I feel like, he pretty much started out with Cyberfrog. He published Cyberfrog originally under 2 or 3 different publishers. I think one of them was Harris Comics. And then from there, later on, I think he eventually made his way to DC. He did stuff like Impulse and whatnot, a few oddball stuff. And then he's made his way over to Marvel, where he did the X-Men for a short stint, I think. And then he made his way back to DC. And eventually, he was the guy that brought Hal Jordan back as Green Lantern. Let me drink my Dr. Pepper here. He was the guy that brought Hal Jordan back as Green Lantern. There we go. I'm enunciating a little bit better now that I've wet my whistle. And from there, eventually left DC, and now he's doing Cyberfrog, and he is one of the largest figures within Comicsgate, a fan-led movement that some people hate and some people love. And there's plenty of articles out there on it. I think I've already covered it in some other videos. I would encourage you, though, to most of the articles out there about Comicsgate tend to be very negative. And I encourage you to read both the negative and try to find some positive articles to have a more informed opinion about it. Because I don't like it when people just take a bunch of sources that all say the same thing and come to a conclusion. You know what I mean? You got to hear a dissenting point of opinion to have more of an informed point of view. But that's just me. So anyway, why are we looking at Ethan Van Sciver's Cyberfrog Indiegogo campaign? Well, first of all, this is the sequel to Cyberfrog Blood Honey, and it's called Cyberfrog 2, Wrecked Planet. The first one did really, really well, hundreds of thousands of dollars. I don't know how much it made. It's probably up in the $500,000 mark for all I know. I honestly can't remember. Those that do know, you can let me know in the comments down below. But this one has made up to $500,000 as of this video, with roughly, we're going to go ahead and round this off to the nearest tenth. I always wondered what I was going to use this bit of mathematics for, but apparently it's only for marketing. That's the only value rounding off the nearest tenth has, really. So we're going to round off this 4,800 and something other number, and we're going to say it's 5,000 backers. So that's pretty good. And I think that's worthy of applause because, whether you support Comicsgate or not, that's irrelevant to the argument that I'm getting ready to make. He is an independent comic book creator in this moment in time with an independent comic book, and he's raised $500,000, got 5,000 backers, doing it on his own, and I think that is worthy of some applause. Give credit where credit is due type of thing. Which brings us to the Todd father. Todd McFarlane of Spider-Man fame, later on of Spawn fame. He is Spawn's #1 fan, needless to say. And he's done an impressive $1 million. Not just $1 million, but as of this video, $1,300,000 and rising, with 10,000 plus backers. And there's still like 24 days to go. This Kickstarter campaign is not that old. And Todd McFarlane is also part of the independent comics book movement. So, I guess I'd kind of like to discuss why there is a difference between the numbers of what EVS has got and what Todd McFarlane's got. I don't think it's going to be too technical, and I kind of breeze through it because it's very general. But it's this. Okay, it's this. Why does Todd McFarlane raise $1 million and he's on his way to probably raising $1,500,000 for all we know? Why is he on track to do that, possibly? Well, I think the thing with Todd McFarlane is he has people that are anti-Comicsgate and people that are Comicsgate backing him. And, I can't say that for an absolute fact, but I kind of go with my gut here. He's a well-liked person. It doesn't matter, who you are, what you believe. Most people tend to like Todd McFarlane. They like his work, and, they like Spawn, right? Am I wrong on that? Does anyone disagree on that? Whereas Ethan Van Sciver, he's part of it sounds dismissive when I say this, but he's part of a segment of the comics fandom there, and I guess there's a limited pool of supporters, and that's part of the problem, both for Todd McFarlane and EVS. You see what I did there? It's a problem for both of them because you got to get new fans. You have to go beyond your fan base, because there's a limit to how much Todd McFarlane can raise. And I'm not trying to jinx his campaign. I don't want to do that, But what I'm saying is there's only so many people buying comic books, and we're not really creating new readers. Now, some people may argue that throughout the years that they've changed comic books up to bring in like a different audience and all this other stuff. But the numbers don't really reflect that. The numbers don't show that really paid off. The people that I blame, if we are going to point fingers, is Diamond Distributors, first and foremost, because they took the comic books out of the mom and pop stores. They got rid of the spinner racks. And when you do that, you're cutting off most people's access to comics. Not everybody has a comic book store within 20 to 30 or 50 miles of them, There's just not that many comic book stores. And it's it's a niche thing. And so most people back in the day, all the way up to the 90s, experienced comic books by going to a gas station, a Walmart, a pharmacy, whatever. I've harped on this for so long. I know I'm beating you over the head with it, but it is so important. If you want comics to flourish and be great again, you got to get comics in the hands of people. Just regular folk. Now, comic book fans are always going to find a way to get a hold of comics. That's why you got a 1 million plus Spawn campaign doing well. That's why you got a $500,000 plus Sciver Frog campaign doing well, because comic book fans will find the comics. They'll find a way, It doesn't matter if the comic book industry is collapsing, they'll find a way to get their comics. That's not the problem. The problem is you got to get new readers. And that's something that's going to affect people that are Comicsgate. It's going to affect people that are not Comicsgate. Because you have to replenish. There we go. I can speak English. You got to replenish those readers, because the sad fact of life is, people get old and die. Sorry, spoiler alert on that one. So you need new people to come in and replace them. And not only that, you need large numbers to make things profitable. That's something else, but that goes without saying. So I had mentioned, the question of this video was, no one can stop EVS, and yes, 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 EVS can be stopped if you don't like the man, you don't like his books, and the best way to do that is to make comics that are superior to what he's putting out. That's it. That's the secret formula. That's the magic key that opens the kingdom. That brings out the great revelation. That's been the thing from the beginning. Comicsgate, in my opinion, probably wouldn't exist if there was great comics being made in the first place, and better customer service and comic book professionals not losing their cool when they're interacting with fans. So yeah, that's the way that you take down the mighty EVS, is just make better comics. And then that makes it a competition. And you know what the great thing about competition is? Everybody wins. Everybody wins because everybody tries to outdo one another. That was one of the great things about Image Comics back in the 90s. All the Image founders, they would try to compete with one another. And they would try to outdo one another. And it got pretty vicious at one point. It went, it got a little personal. There was some bad blood between Mark Silvestri and Rob Liefeld, because each one of them had their homegrown talent. And I think Rob was trying to take some of Mark Silvestri's guys that he had taught. He invested a lot of time and effort into teaching and stuff. And so that and a few other things, caused a big fallout at Image. Lots of interesting things, to talk about with that. But in a larger sense, before I wrap this video up, it's a very, very fascinating and interesting time in comics. And for those of you that are bummed out that how things are going, and you're worried about comic shops, and you're worried about your favorite comic book creators, and the companies that make them and all this other stuff, things like this happen. That's the importance of being a student of history. You don't have to, have like a PhD or anything. You can have like a layman's view of history. But you do need to understand and respect history, because history does tend to repeat itself. And the comic book industry tends to collapse every few decades. It goes through this. And there's different reasons for that. It's not the same reason every time. Sometimes it's because people don't like what's being put out in the comic book industry. Taste change. I think the end of hair metal, transitioning into grunge, and then grunge went away, and that went into nu metal, and nu metal went away, and you see what I'm saying? People's taste change, and so that's one thing that affects the popularity of comics. And there's also bad business dealings and shady things, and then there's all the stuff that happened here lately, and that's a lot to unpack, honestly, in one video. But yeah, I guess what I'm trying to say is, guys and gals and guys, everything's going to be okay. And the reason I know that is, just like me, you love comics and you want to read comics and you can't get enough of comics. And the best thing to help the comic book industry out is to support the comics that you love, that you like, and especially support independent comic book creators. Find some independent comic book out there on Indiegogo, on Kickstarter, and back it, support it. That's how you help keep the comic book industry healthy. Don't give your dollars to companies that are not going to respect you and your thoughts and stuff like that. That's not to say that they should cater to you, but that's not to say that they should ignore you either. This is going to lead to a lot healthier market, and it's going to lead to possibly cheaper prices for comics. We'll have to wait and see on that. There's going to be better distribution models, possibly, so we'll have to wait and see how that plays out. But I'm very optimistic about things, and I think you should be too. Lots of interesting news here. Some some of you are going to get really aggravated at how I just over the thumbnail, but it is what it is. So anyway, I'd like to give a shout out to all my loyal royal crew that have stayed faithful and true with me throughout the years. I love you guys and gals. Thank you for that. And some people say that I might be Doomcock's neighbor, and that might be true, and that might not be true. But as I am living in the shadow of the castle, I would like to leave by saying, until next time, I will see you in the next video.